Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Proper Variant and this is Victoria 3's Dev Diary number 81. I'm excited today because we're going to be jumping into new laws in 1.3, and this is an important Dev Diary because there are some laws that we saw coming, some laws that we didn't see coming, some laws that I'm absolutely sold on, and some laws where I'm sitting here thinking I am not sure that I love that implementation. Let's take a look at this, and I as always would urge you to leave whatever your opinion is in the comments. I will read it, and maybe I am taking a look at some of these laws, whether I'm positive or negative about them, from just a very specific angle that you disagree with, and that makes it then of course that I might learn something from whatever you take as an angle when it comes to these topics. I absolutely love the exchange in that direction there every single time. You know, Victoria 3 is such a complex issue, not to go on a tangent here, but it's such a complex game in how things impact each other. I just very recently rebalanced urban centers, and all of a sudden the petite bourgeoisie and the Catholic Church, or well the church I should say, are a factor in even mid-game to late-game policies because they are employed in these urban centers and they're getting fairly rich. The entire rebalancing there is massive and insane. It boggles the mind that this isn't something in vanilla right now because urban centers are just unprofitable. But yeah, these implications here of any changes are huge, and if I'm missing any, or if you think I'm missing any, then definitely let me know. Anyway. Hello, this is Victoria, and today we'll be going over the new laws added in 1.3. By and large, these laws exist to grant an experience that allows for more modern forms of states, to represent the changing ideologies of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and to represent some of the most contentious and important issues of the period: land reform, anti-clericalism, and more modernized systems of governance. The stated design goal here is something I think that we can all understand. There are many complaints that have been lodged that were basically saying, I am done passing my laws by 1870, and then I just hang out. My state in 1870 is the same as in 1936 because I have reached the end of what I want to do in this playthrough when it comes to laws. Now, I will tell you that this is sort of self-enforced. Hey, if you reach perfect democracy, maybe you should say, I'll go with fascism, or I'll go with communism, or I want to roll it back again. But the fact that you have to set this gameplay goal yourself and be very active is something I think that you can design something better around this, right? As a developer, you can design a better mechanical system around this. So I definitely welcome this. Now, when it comes to the actual laws, I'm split on some of them, so let's just take a look at them right here. Here, immediately, you can see, no surprise here, just one column is larger, which clearly means serfdom right here. Land reform has finally been fully introduced. This is a very positive, this is a great change. We have this in the Victoria Tweaks mod, it's in there, you can play with that right now, although of course our laws there differ. They come from the land reform mod, which is an amazing mod. They differ, they still give you a really different gameplay experience, and they finally create this infighting between the rural folk and the landowners, which just isn't really a given in vanilla right now. This making it into the game, and in a really nice implementation, we're going to see that in a second. I'm definitely a big fan. The one thing I want to mention right here is I think this icon should change. I don't think no workers' rights should have the serfdom abolished icon because, hey, it's not, right? Anyway, land reform is the first topic. It is the biggest topic as well in this dev diary because, well, it is its own law category rather than just a law in particular. One of the most important political issues within modernizing nations was the matter of land reform. Whilst most European nations by 1836 had abolished formal serfdom, they often still had tenant farming systems, which gave landlords an immense amount of power over the peasantry. Within the period of Victoria 3, many political movements throughout developing nations explicitly sought to handle the issue of landlord power, even after serfdom was formally abolished. Such an important topic, really, in how it impacts the game. Under the new land reform law category, production methods pertaining to the rural economy have been decoupled from the economic system law, instead being folded into this category. Big fan. Again, I mean, what can you say? We've seen this again in the mod, and here the way they do it, very nice. The ownership production methods available for farms and plantations will be determined through the player's land reform laws. Previously, the distinction between the system of serfdom and non-serfdom was extremely non-granular. Once serfdom was abolished, the player could safely ignore the issue of land reform for the entirety of the game, only touching this law category again if they wish to implement workers' protections. Yep, that was indeed one of the bigger issues there. With the new land reform law category, the issue of who owns the land has been separated from the rights of workers, allowing for increased choice within both categories and options for interesting political setups, such as a highly laissez-faire republic with a modern commercialized agriculture law and a total lack of workers' rights, or a paternalistic monarchy that maintains serfdom but considers protections for laborers to be an innate component of its social contract. I mean, it can't be overstated. This paragraph puts it perfectly. This law category was absolutely needed, and it being in is great. Now, what are the categories or what are the laws that we actually have here? And yeah, by the way, I'm looking at this right now. Serfdom, the no serfdom icon is only in the labor rights, no workers' rights, but it doesn't actually mean that, right? yeah, I don't know. I think that icon should go. What categories do we have? We have serfdom, we have tenant farmers, we have commercialized agriculture, we have homesteading, and we have collectivized agriculture. So, if you want to translate this, right, these two here to me sound like the two middle categories that we have in the land reform mod. Then homesteading, of course, is the be-all, end-all. That is what the, for example, US start with. That is what Transvaal has, and so on. And then collectivist agriculture is very much a co-op / command economy type endgame law. So here you can also see a progression, even if you don't put yourself into a position where, you know, let's say you go towards land to homesteading, you will still be able to reform this law at the very late game point if you go communist, for example, with collectivized agriculture. So this yet again takes into account the late game dynamics. Normal serfdom gives gentry assembly 50%, of course, disallowed interventionism, disallowed by laissez-faire, and disallowed by command economy. 200 groups support this law. The rest in this screen is very, very similar to everything that we know. Nothing too surprising right here. The new land reform laws represent a variety of land ownership schema, all of which play an important role in affecting the political strength of groups in your nation. While serfdom and tenant farmers greatly benefit the traditional land-owning elites, the new homesteading law both provides a base benefit to the political strength of the rural folk and unlocks the new homesteading production method, which cuts the proportion of aristocrats and farms, whilst increasing the amount of farmer jobs. Pictured, a wheat farm in Russia with serfdom active versus a wheat farm in the US with homesteading active. The USA starts as the USA starting homesteading law empowers the rural folk in the north, whilst the southern plantations remain dominated by the landowners. It seems as if, and this is very positive, in the mod, the way it is dealt with is that so basically in the mod, plantations also follow the homesteading ownership method, but if you're a farmer in the south and is in the slave states, you're more likely to support the landowners. The way they seem to be doing it here is, in farms with the homesteading end, you actually get the farmers, right? We see this right here in Vermont. They have aristocrats, but very, very few, compared to, for example, here in Astrakhan, the aristocrats are 100, and over here they're just 25, and then you got 50 farmers more, which isn't all that much, but it is a change, right? And in the southern plantations, so plantation ownership methods, even under smallholding, so under homesteading, I assume, would then still have a whole lot more aristocrats, right, instead of farmers. Makes perfect sense to me. Plantations are more centrally organized. There isn't a plantation model that I know of that is really organized in true homesteading fashion, but basically what this means is that you will see a significant difference between northern and southern states, because, well, in the south you will have plantations, and in the north you will have regular old farms. The balancing here, I'm not too sure. Who knows, who cares? Ultimately, hey, listen, based on these numbers, it seems a bit little when it comes to the additional farmers we get from the change here in Vermont, but I gotta tell you, at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters. The balancing is the balancing is the balancing. It is an ever-evolving beast. Whether this is enough to empower the farmers and the rural folk, we shall see, but this definitely will make it so that the US, at the very start of the game, will feel different from, for example, France, which is fairly liberalized, but very much obviously doesn't have homesteading. Commercialized and collectivized agriculture, respectively, represent more modern systems of industrial agriculture, with commercialized agriculture treating land as private property and farming as a business like any other, unlocking the publicly traded production method. Collectivized agriculture, on the other hand, organizes the land into plots worked by agricultural collectives. These collectives can either be owned by the workers themselves or owned directly by the state, unlocking both the workers' cooperative and government-run production methods. Right, so let's take a look at this collectivized agriculture right here. Bureaucrats get power, very much central economy. Obviously, this is actually command economy and cooperative ownership sort of viable. Both of these can have collectivized agriculture, but bureaucrats being empowered is very classic command economy for Victoria 3 for sure. Then commercialized agriculture pushes you towards the industrialists, so this is basically like any mutually traded, sort of mutual fund traded building at this point. I wish it was a bit more restrictive, because these sort of laws will definitely allow us to very, very easily knock out the old aristocracy. I mean, you can do it even right now, right, with the shopkeepers. You can do it with the landowners in the current version very, very easily by just putting in a whole bunch of industrialists. At the very least, this is now gated behind commercialized agriculture. If you find yourself, for example, in the US, you have homesteading, which means you can't do mutual funds. I wonder whether you can do mutual funds at all with homesteading. Commercialized agriculture, let's say, for example, in Prussia, I assume you have tenant farmers, then this would be... Yeah, no, after thinking this through, I would argue that this makes a nice and sharp divide between just disempowering the aristocrats by putting in industrialists via the mutual fund production method, which was previously so easy to do, very much the case. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think commercialized agriculture now in this case would make it so that you see a massive amount of resistance from disempowering the aristocracy, which in turn means that even if you start not with serfdom, but just with tenant farmers, the aristocracy should be more entrenched in their position. I think this is a great change overall. As laws that greatly affect the balance of powers within nations, land reform is prone to sparking very contentious debate amongst the populace, as well as fierce resistance from those that have interest in the current system. But the opportunity granted to emerging classes by the prospect of land reform will serve as a boon to the players' efforts to enact them. Right, farmhand fire sale, we see one of the events here when you enact collectivized agriculture. Wealthy affiliates of the landowners in Valencia, in response to the law collectivized agriculture, have ordered their surplus livestock culled and their bumper crops burned. You're seeing this? They're just burning everything. Could feed my whole family for a month on one of those fires. Reckon those rich milksops in the next town talked them into it. All the more reason to press ahead, or the process cannot continue if it courts a famine. Right, obviously this is one of the law events right there. This is actually a success event. It will make it easier. The plight of the second sons, this is a negative event, I believe. With virgin land to award second sons becoming an increasingly rare commodity in western Norway, many farmers engaged in the local trade center hope that a transition to commercialized agriculture will yield the revenues necessary to provide for all their offspring upon death, or at the very least, leave a single profitable farm that can be sold off for profit. The fields are not wholly sustainable within new models. Each farmer would be left to his or her own devices regarding each field. It is assumed that each subsequent harvest would overwork the soil. Middle management to ensure a smooth transition process is required. Appropriate training for each farmer looking to exploit the new commercialized agriculture law is also required, right? So this is basically a recommendation on how to behave. Rezone the land to those who can already afford to purchase it, and company instruction on best practices. Their concerns make for excellent talking points. All the industrialists and the power of capitals shall step in. Really excited to see this. This is now an interplay that you just previously don't have, and quite frankly, even the interplay with the mutual fund production method isn't something you have in the current land reform mod. This is definitely very nice. In general, land reform is something that I'm very positive about. I've wanted this in the game, we're getting this in the game, huge fan. Whether it is balanced, we shall see, but that is basically my stance in general. This is the law here, this is a law category which I am hugely positive about for the upcoming patch 1.3. State atheism is the next topic, and I'm sort of split on this, okay? So let's take a look at what it actually is. Many states within the time frame of Victoria III had politics that were dominated by differing attitude towards religion. Nations such as Mexico, the Spanish Republic, and the socialist states of the early 20th century all practiced strong anti-clerical politics, seeking to minimize the political influence of traditional religious institutions within society. These anti-religious policies will be modeled in 1.3 with a new state atheism law, and with it the new atheist religion. So this law is clearly meant for very radical transitions of your society. I hope, and I assume, now that I'm looking at this, I hope and that I assume, so this must be in Mexico, right? Catholic Church, yeah. I hope and I assume that introducing this law under normal circumstances is quite hard, okay? It's not a pure modern law, don't get me wrong here, but the problem that I see with this, let's take a look at this, right? You kick out the political church entirely, minus 50%, that is massive. You get a lot of authority, you get very fast conversion, very important, keep that in mind. And you get new production methods for urban centers, which means that if urban centers are productive and actually make money, the church is weakened even more. You get the minus 50%, and then the church loses all of their jobs, right? This can be problematic. Whether it is, I'm not sure. Let's take a look. State atheism is the ultimate means to reduce the power of the devout within a nation, banning religion from public life and making all religions discriminated against. Nations with state atheism will gain a new atheist state religion to replace their previous one, and enactment will grant a small group of atheist pops in your nation. I am fine with all of that. I think it should be a radical move, much like it was, for example, even during the French Revolution, there was this movement, right, against all religion, which then ultimately became laïcité, so the further step than just secularism, and which definitely was very hostile towards religion. But my worry here is that if you introduce this law, before we actually go into any detailed explanation why I think this might be a problematic law, let's continue here. Whilst this is an immensely effective way of reducing the power of religious institutions within the state, state atheism will create a massive group of discriminated pops, which will increase turmoil through the nation. With this law, it will be ever more important to both focus on keeping standard of living high and prioritizing national values to quash the remnants of religion within your countries. State atheism will generally be backed by nihilists, communists, and other similar ideologies. They already said by positivists as well. The process of enacting state atheism will ignite conflicts between secular and religious society, but it will also open new opportunities for social experimentation as traditional institutions are gendered marginalized. A river's new bearing. As Mexico embarks on a quest of questioning traditional religious morality, members of the intelligentsia present their theses. Tradition still yet has a place in society. Away with faith, away with all of its trappings, or there's nothing at all that should not be questioned. There are here works of charity. Charities associated with the Catholic Church have come under fire by supporters of the state atheism law for being staffed by clergy and pious laity. Many people have rallied to the defense of these popular charities, threatening the success of state atheism. My problem with this law isn't that it's available, and it's not that you can introduce it even fairly early on. That makes perfect sense to me. As the dev diary said, there were many early attempts, right? The problem that I have with this, first of all, is obviously that, like, nobody really seems interested at all in maintaining state religion, which is like multiculturalism before 1.2, kind of. But more importantly, the idea, especially before we had totalitarian tools to suppress others, and to suppress existing social structures such as the church. Let's take the post-World War II communist dictatorships in Europe. The idea that I can suppress religion to a degree that would be meaningful enough to push atheism into being a majority position here for the population doesn't really make sense to me. What I'm saying is, if I am, for example, I don't know, I'm France, I'm Germany, I'm Austria, whatever. I introduce state atheism. I think there should be a sliding scale in how much people are discriminated and in how much people are actually converting. What I mean here is that the discrimination of Muslims in a state religion Catholic state is different from the discrimination in a state atheist state of Muslims, okay? Obviously, discrimination happens in both. In the GDR, for example, you had the situations where if you were the child of a pastor, you would be very unlikely to actually go to university. It wouldn't be permitted all that much. There were many other examples all throughout the Eastern Bloc, of course. But the point here being is, once you have totalitarian tools, it is much more viable, much more efficient at discriminating, and then I can see more people converting as well in a more modern settings. But if this is from 1836 to 1936 the same rate, I see this as critical. I find it very, very odd to think that a non-dictatorship that has totalitarian tools, so modern outlaw dissent tools, would be able to turn Mexico, for example, into a majority, a vast majority state atheist, or well, atheist state. I hope that the rate there is adjusted, okay? I'm completely fine with the initial push where it gives you some atheists, makes sense. Many people obviously were non-believers, didn't show that until state atheism was pushed through. I just find it odd. I find it odd that this seems to be as viable as it is. Let's see what that actually balances into. I like the inclusion of this because this is roleplay, this is LARP. If you're a communist country, for example, whether it's a dictatorship or not, you might want to go with state atheism. If you're playing France, you might want to go even further. Let's push laïcité as much as we can, right? Go with state atheism. I wish that both the discrimination that this now introduces and the conversion that it then creates, I wish that was a bit on a sliding scale. Anyway, technocracy and single-party states. The final two laws added in 1.3 are the technocracy and single-party state laws, both representing more modern distributions of power that were either implemented or theorized about during the tail end of our time period. These are not actually the last laws. There's one more law, but we're going to see that in a second. It's the one that I'm the most negative about. Both of these laws grant significant authority, with single-party state granting the highest flat bonus to authority in the game. I like this. This is cool. Again, gives more flavor if you want to go either communist or fascist, if you want to go into a truly totalitarian sort of point of view. You get authority, get political strength per vote, plus 100 legitimacy based on votes, and since there's only one party, that party will have all the legitimacy coming from this political strength right here. Plus 20% attraction of interest groups in government, meaning people are more inclined to join this party as well, of course. Government ideology penalty goes down also, and they will reevaluate their party support, of course. Then technocracy, no parties, no elections, it's just, you're just being led, right? It's just, you just get legitimacy. Let's hope that your clout, that your government, that it all aligns and that you're strong. I'm not sure about technocracy. I understand the difference, of course, to oligarchy when we see the political strength, for example, coming from academics, engineers, and officers, but this smells like oligarchy, right? This feels very, very similar. I don't think it gives you too many other differences. Obviously, it unlocks with central archives, and you know what? Let me just double check this here. No, this doesn't have any unlock necessity. This makes a lot of sense. This is locked behind political agitation. This is locked behind central archives. These are endgame laws. Having them as flavor laws makes perfect sense to me. They're viable as well. Nothing here seems unviable. I'm just not sure that this is differentiated enough from oligarchy to really make me want to go to technocracy. Who even is on oligarchy this late into the game? I wonder what the preferences here of the different interest groups are, but in general I think these laws are really neat. I prefer single party state as an implementation over technocracy so far. The new single party state laws intended as a late game replacement to the autocracy and oligarchy laws designed to fit into the era of mass politics and the party state. Once single party state is enacted, either the ruler's IG's political party will become the sole political party in the nation, or a new political party involving the ruler's IG will form. It was always weird to have the Soviet Union with autocracy in how Victoria 3 is right now. It makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because that was the best implementation, but this one-party state obviously is better. It's cooler, it's more neat, I like it. Now this right here, the modern face of the Empire of Japan, ruled by the firm hand of the Teisei Yoku Sankai. This is interesting, largely really only because this guy has a new frame. You see this? The background's changed, but we saw this in previous dev diaries already. What does this mean? Does this mean it's hereditary? It's like a head in a book. They did say they wanted to make characters more interesting. I assume this has to do something with it. But what that actually means, I'm not so sure. Nobody else has this. Oh, wait a minute. Isn't that interesting? Is this the same guy? I don't think so. These have these backgrounds. These have these backgrounds. Oh, this guy has this one. I think these are basically just politicians, maybe? Because this one is a general. This one is a general. And a politician. General and politician. Could he be the... No, he's not the heir. Is there a new role next to general and admiral and ruler? This could be like a spy? An agitator? An ambassador? Ooh, ambassador would be cool, you know that? Anyway, I wonder. I'm very curious. I don't know what that means, but some people here have different backgrounds. Not all of them do. Very interesting. This is a one-party state example. I think is really cool. Got nothing against it. I think one-party state is a great law. Under a monarchical single-party state, the head of state will be hereditary as normal, but under another system, whenever the head of state dies or otherwise changes, a new leader will be chosen from the interest groups within the party. A single-party state does permit including non-party interest groups, but they will come at a substantial hit to legitimacy. So if somebody does not align itself with the establishment, they are out. It will be very difficult to get them in, but the establishment itself can change, because if I didn't have an emperor, I might be in a situation where my landowners fall out of grace. All of a sudden, it's the Buddhist monks that determine what is going on. Really cool addition. Means for communists as well that sometimes it might differ between trade unions, between intelligentsia, and so on. Really cool stuff. Enacting a single-party state will enrage those interest groups not contained within the party, but it will allow a unique political situation where both more authoritarian laws like command economy and collectivized agriculture and more democratic laws such as women's suffrage and elected bureaucrats are available. Love it. Really cool implementation, connects to all of these other laws, to the interest groups' interests. Very neat. Then here we got some events for an advanced event and a success event. As a show of support and national unity, the petite bourgeoisie have come to endorse the People's Party's slate of candidates for all upcoming elections rather than their own parties. Very neat. This is a very cool event, actually, that makes the petite bourgeoisie switch its alignment. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder whether this is also something that we can do outside of these events. It seems like the petite bourgeoisie is actually switching over, right? They're switching over to the other party. Influencing that was always something people wanted to do. We'll see. Condemning the efforts of the People's Party to establish a single-party state, protesters largely affiliated with the armed forces have begun a multi-day occupation of the streets and cities in cities across southern Finland. Call upon our loyalists to demonstrate support. Such things demand the truncheon and little else, or we must spend more time educating the people on our system. These are neat events, yeah, nothing wrong with this. And here we have a dictatorial republic, because this is the technocracy. Meanwhile, a technocracy represents ruled by the trained and educated, in accordance with the theories of figures such as Henri de Saint-Simon and Howard Scott. The tendencies the technocracy draws from are myriad, but all desire a state primarily ruled by technical experts. A technocratic state will tend to be supported more by the intelligentsia and industrialists and provides benefits to the political strength of the educated class, from academics to officers. Technocracies will dispense with the inefficient and unenlightened notion of democracy altogether, removing political parties, cancelling elections, and ruling in a fashion similar to autocracies, anarchies, and oligarchies. This, to me, kind of seems like a LARP law rather than a massive shift in power. If you are an oligarchy in an industrialized nation right now in Victoria 3, the people that will be ruling are, by and large, the intelligentsia and the industrialists. We can switch to technocracy, it's a different flavor, right? But does this change as much as the difference between an autocracy and a one-party state? I don't think so. A one-party state has a lot of more dynamics than how people are attracted to the IGs, then they vote on that, right? And the popularity of the characters as well. I don't know. We'll see how it feels in play. This law, I'm like, it's not bad being here, but I'm not in love with it. Now here comes the law. Oh, actually, we're not quite there yet. Okay, technocracy can be combined with every set of governance principles in the game, although such combinations may be quite unstable, meaning that both the platonic ideal of enlightened governance and the grand dreams of true Vaporadus patriots can be realized under law. Enlightened despotates, cybernetic state, sure. A technocracy will be greatly beneficial for those that wish to enshrine the rule of the industrialists and intelligentsia without worrying about elections, and it as well permits the command economy law, allowing for a highly centralized, streamlined and optimized economy under the auspices of stone-faced men in stately grey suits. Did they... I think oligarchy doesn't do command economy anymore, right? So I guess that's where the big difference is. I suppose, yeah. The New Machine. A group of influential engineers have greatly improved productivity in the shipyards of Bahia through the application of scientific principles. They suggest that under technocracy, they would be able to apply these principles to the mechanisms of government. Right, and then you can push that further. I'm not too positive, I'm not too negative about this law. I think it might be great. It probably isn't gonna be something that blows you away, but it can be great for roleplay, and I wouldn't ever really agitate against role-playing unless it's the following law. Okay, let's take a look at this. I don't like this one. I think this one is not that great. Industry ban. As the final law we will be visiting, we have precisely the opposite of technocracy and one of the most drastic changes in playstyle in Victoria 3, industry banned. Plus 50% rule for political strength, minus 50% technology spread, plus 50% technology cost. Yes, can subsidize all of the rural and agrarian things. Aristocrats' investment pool contribution goes up, and it disallows multiple production methods. It will no longer be possible to build heavy industry buildings. All heavy industry buildings in this country will be dismantled. The industry ban law represents the most radical elements of opposition to the industrialization of the Victorian era. Under this law, all heavy industry in your nation, steel mills, motor industries, chemical plants and more will be destroyed and cannot be replaced until the law is replaced. Furthermore, this law forbids all automation technologies for the industries that remain, mandating the economy remain both small-scale and labor-intensive. Technology spread and research speed will be sharply reduced, allowing your nation to remain a pristine pastoral land, unblemished by things such as smog, labor-saving technology, or modern medicine. There are two prime thoughts that I have on this, okay? The first one is, I think that this law is interesting because it introduces restrictions that go further than just ownership methods, okay? They tried this, they told me at PDXCon that they tried to restrict production methods via laws as well in the past so that your interest groups take direct control of how your nation is run, but chose to not go with this. This is the first law, to my knowledge, that does this. It's a return to that principle that they tried and that didn't really work out. And I think it's an interesting principle. I'm very interested in this. I think this should be pursued going forward. I think the trade unions, for example, should be against automation under certain circumstances, maybe even the petite bourgeoisie. There are some interesting thoughts there. My second thought here is, this law sucks. Like, and yes, obviously it's intended to be bad, but this law sucks that it's never a valid choice, it's never a viable action unless you really want to roleplay. I think mechanically, the correct choice and roleplay shouldn't necessarily go against one another, okay? But here, they are as far apart as they could be. This is a horrible choice, and that makes it so. Just imagine, oh my god, just imagine if you have a revolution that wants this law, the revolution happens, they destroy everything. The whole industry in that revolutionary territory is gone, right? And then you retake it. It's already annoying enough to have a revolution that deletes your universities. This sounds like hell, right? On top of this, the AI surely will never get this law. This is something that I'm always vehemently against, okay? When we do the Victoria Twigs mod, when we talk about like what do we put in there, what's going on there, a fundamental choice that we try to never implement is the idea that there are only player-facing mechanics. I think all mechanics, if I can implement it, right? If Doodles can implement it, all mechanics that are in should be viable, usable, and interesting for the player and the AI. It should produce interesting results no matter who plays the country. There's no way that the industry banned law ever happens for an AI nation without the player doing some random nonsense, right? And even then, industry banned is just the AI does it and the AI dies, right? I don't know. I see why this is in here. The laws that are in this dev diary are primarily RP oriented. But this law is so uniquely terrible, so uniquely only an RP choice, where Technocracy, for example, it gives you this authority bonus, right? It does the thing where it says, okay, check this out, you get this huge authority bonus, you get this authority bonus, you get the strength from academics and engineers and officers, which might stabilize you, it gives you the new option of command economy and co-op and yada yada yada. And then industry ban is just like, the rule folk is stronger. The rule folk sucks. They suck. This sold, I don't know. I don't like this law. It feels like bloat. It feels like a bloat law to me. Yes, it's like, if you want to build your utopia / dystopia, right, whatever you want to call it, personally speaking, then this law makes sense being there. But I think this law sucks so bad, and this law is so clearly, in my eyes anyway, only player facing. I'm not a fan. I don't really want this. I really hope, because it says when enacted, if somebody rebels and enacts this law in this rebellion, then all your industry is gone. Everything is gone when you retake that stuff. How are you even gonna, if you do this in a revolution, and you are the revolution, how are you gonna defeat an industrialized other country? Sure, it's a challenge run, but that, again, it just means the AI will never be able to use this. I don't know, I think this law sucks. You tell me. You tell me what you think. Darwin among the machines. An article published in the Boston Informer has been making headways within the country's literary circles, inflaming the ongoing debate surrounding industry banned. Claiming that machines are a kind of mechanical life undergoing constant evolution, it warns that, unless mankind acts prudently, machines might one day supplant humans as the dominant species. We refer to the question, what sort of creatures man's next successor in the supremacy of the earth is likely to be. We have often heard this debated, but it appears to us that we are ourselves creating our own successors. Day by day, the machines are gaining ground upon us. Day by day, we are becoming more subservient to them. More men are daily bound down as slaves to tend them. More men are daily devoting the energies of their whole lives to the development of mechanical life. The upshot is simply a question of time. The machines shall not replace us, or sounds like someone has sat in his dank studio for a bit too long. Of course, passing this law will be immensely contentious. Any group that has an opinion on the economic system will usually have a low opinion of abolishing the means of production entirely. There are, of course, some proponents in this law that may arrive. However, and under a sufficiently cruel and alienating system, some otherwise reasonable people may see putting an end to the industry itself as desirable to the status quo. Simpletons. Opponents of the opposed industry ban laws with ties to the intelligentsia have infuriated the people they sought to influence. Many are calling for a harsh reprisal for this disturbance. What? I don't even understand that play. If they're so smart, they can learn to live without machines, or perhaps we can hear what Millard Kiddu has to say. Industry ban will enormously empower the rural folk, who suck, and through disabling heavy industry will also harm the influence of the industrialists and boost the landowners. By combining homesteading and industry ban, one can acquire a plus 75% bonus to the clout of the rural folk, creating the rural idyllic realm within which power lies primarily with smallholding settlers. As you can see, we are putting significant effort into making both internal politics and the ideological variation more interesting and flavorful in 1.3, as well as creating additional laws for both more exotic late-game situations and critically important political issues that define the time. I like most of these laws, not sold on Technocracy, but industry banned. I don't see an application except when I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just do something random. Yeah, no, I honestly, I'm struggling to try and see a different angle on this. I just can't. Hey, let me know what you think, right? Also, revolutions now also adopt the most desired governance principles of their most powerful IG. Love this. This is at the very tail end of this dev diary. Such a great sentence. You won't be seeing any more radical or communist revolutions with monarchs at their heads. Brazilian peasant revolt right here. This peasant revolt has become a provisional government with a provisional president with dictatorial transfer of power. One example of a revolutionary government against a monarchy, composed mostly of people who are ambivalent on the question of monarchism versus republicanism. There you go. And that is all. We will see you next week. I think this might mean we will be getting the announcement of the next patch / maybe DLC, right? Next week, because this is, usually they say what comes next, and they did say on the Discord that this is not a mistake, so let's see. These are my thoughts on this dev diary. Let me know what you thought, and I think we'll just end it right here, right? No, I don't know. Industry banned. It's just such a meme. It's such a meme. It's like, I don't know. Let me know what you think, okay? I'll see you later, alligator.